What's up? Today we are doing a deep dive into gouache. What is it? Why is it used? How is it like or dislike other mediums? And what does it have to do with mixed media art? We are covering everything gouache for mixed media artists today. So buckle your seatbelts. We have a lot of ground to cover. Let's start with the basics. What the heck is gouache? Gouache is, in its most simplistic form, a watercolor that is totally opaque and very, very matte. So there's no sheen in this whatsoever. When was it first used? Well, it was first used back in the 16th century. When I Googled it, it said oil painters would, tempera painters would use oil paint on top to give it its matte finish. Now, gouache most definitely is known for its matte finish. The definition, however, doesn't actually make any sense since they're talking about oil paints, but let's just say it's been used since the 1500s by artists to give it that matte quality. If you would like to do a deep dive on your own time, I'm sure you can find out more. It then became popularized in the 19th and 20th century to make poster arts and was most popularly used by comic book artists, which I think is fascinating and super interesting. So, how does it compare to other mediums? Well, it is just like watercolors in that it is completely water reactive, and that doesn't stop. So some mediums, they're water reactive, and then once they've been activated by the water, they become permanent. Not gouache. Gouache stays water reactive, just like watercolors. How does it compare to acrylics? Well, interestingly, like acrylics, it has an opacity to it, right? You can't see through it. And then to make life a little bit more complicated, paint makers design what we call acrylic gouache, and that is gouache that is permanent when it is dry. So it's actually more akin to acrylics. So now I'm going to show you a quick demo of how all of these things compare. To make life super more interesting, manufacturers and different brands have also come up with different products that mimic gouache that are really acrylics. And I'm gonna go through those as well. So I'm gonna test to show you the opacity, the water reactability, how they compare to watercolors, how they compare to different products on the market. Gouache comes in tubes. It also comes in these weird jelly cup-like forms. So, and I also want to talk about the differences in price points because the pricing is like vastly different. So I'm also going to do a breakdown of the pricing comparison. We're doing it all today. All right, let's switch views and I'm going to do some demoing. And as always, Tippy is here to assist and to attack. Right, Tippy? Are you ready? Let's go. Hello. So, before I get into the demoing, let's just talk really quick about what you can paint gouache on, what surfaces and what brushes to use, right? We're kind of doing, like I said, deep dive, we're covering everything today. So, what can you paint on? You can paint on anything, actually. Here is a gouache piece I did on, this is pre-stretched canvas, okay? And this was applied with actually mostly just sponge. This is a magical tree, obviously. This is a little Hobbit house project. All these, by the way, I've done, and I also have to give a shout out to my best friend, Lucy Bryden. She is the one who has introduced me to gouache. We actually run an art membership together called the Celtic Collective, where we only do fantasy themed projects. And she is the gouache guru, and she is the one responsible for getting me into this medium. So Lucy, girlfriend, we also have a podcast here on YouTube. I know, Tippy's here. She's about to attack me. She's in full attack mode. So that's where all these projects are from. So these are all gouache, yes, thanks to Lucy. So this one, again, this is on a wood slice, okay? So this was painted with a brush and sponged on. Again, this is all gouache as well. So as you can see, it looks very acrylic-like. Whoa, but it is not. You see my cat? My cat's like about to kick my butt. Same thing with this. What I wanted to show you about this one is that this is where gouache and watercolors was used in the same project. I'm going to use this to point because my cat is in attack mode. I don't want to put my hand out there. So this, as you can see, this is watercolor, so it has sort of the translucency as that watercolor has. And then if you notice, this, the background is, I take it out, but my cat's gonna literally kill me. This is, see how opaque that is? It's completely opaque and it's matte, so you cannot see through it. So again, watercolor, you can see the layers and they're sort of transparent. And then yeah, this is gouache and this is gouache too. And you can tell it's super matte. So it's really interesting. The effect. I'll show you another one side by side. I know, hi Tippy. Where is this one? So, oh, here's another great example. So this is a face I did in gouache, and this one is ink and watercolor. And again, you can see the transparency of the ink and watercolor, right? The paper, white of the paper really glows underneath. And then again, here you have the matte finish. It's literally like a chalky, completely matte. So it's just a very, so it just produces a very different look. I'm kind of obsessed. So that's for substrates. So what brushes can you use? And again, all this knowledge comes from Lucy. She's taught me everything I know about it. So Lucy Bride, and she also does have her own YouTube channel you can check out. But if you want more information on our art club, you can go to onescottoneknot.com. Why am I showing you this? I have no reason to show you that. So gouache brushes are like they're not watercolor brushes. Gouache is too thick for watercolor brushes, so keep those away from gouache. And also you can use acrylic brushes. I like to use my crappy brushes, like all the in-between, the brushes that are in between watercolor and acrylic. Acrylic brushes can be a little bit too stiff. So these are all these cheapy brushes like buy at craft stores like Michael's that are too soft for acrylic, but they're too hard for watercolor. The good news is that, yeah, these are all the cheapy ones. Just the cheapy ones are the best ones. So how nice is that? And you can also work on, the pictures I was just showing you are watercolor paper, and that is fine. And also you can pretty much use any paper appropriate for watercolors or mixed media. It's really not picky, so you can use your cheap paper there too, as long as it has some weight to it to be able to withstand the weight of the acrylics. All right, so now let's do a quick demo to show you the differences, and the most important thing that you can take away from this demo is how many gouache alternatives there are on the market. Tippy, oh my God, she's gonna kill me. There's so many things. If you can't afford gouache or don't know which you're looking for, or they turn out to be too expensive, because we're gonna be going through all the costs of the gouache, the different kinds of gouache and the alternatives. I have some great tips on what you can use as alternatives that will save you a boat ton of money while giving you the same effect. So make sure you watch to the end, because that pricing information is really, really important and interesting, and it's a vast difference between the prices for all the different products. So we're going to be testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 gouache types and gouache alternatives. That is paint that gives you that exact matte look of gouache. Because at the end of the day, if you're just going for the look, there's actually quite a few products that can give you that same look. So this is what we are going to be testing. First, we're going to be testing traditional gouache. Okay, so there's a lot of different brands. This is by Turner. There's fine art brands like Holbein and Newton Windsor and, sorry, Winsor Newton. I'm just afraid of my cat right now. She's like lingering and threatening. Turner is just what I happened to grab at Jerry's. And I went online both at Jerry's and Amazon and grabbed like the average price point. So this is $15 for a tube like this. So we are going to be testing Turner gouache. And this is traditional gouache, meaning it is opaque and it is water reactive. So we're just going to do a little testy poo of all 6 of these so you can see how similar, oh, that's not good, how similar they are, right, Tippy? She's like, I do not approve. Oh gosh, my studio is like spilling over. All right, so here, oh, that's way too much. Okay, so here, and I actually, for the first time, I'm so bad when I do demos, I always use like different colors and stuff, which is not helpful. So I got all the same colors today so that you can see. So Turner Gouache, oh, this is just what my local Jerry's Artorama has, so that's why I picked this up. Now red doesn't cover as well as a lot of other colors. Reds, oranges, and yellows are kind of known for their lack of opacity. All right, so there's our Turner Gouache. So this is, in fact, once it's dried, we can re-wet it and activate it. So I will show you that. So that was about $15 a tube, as you just saw. Now the tubes are different sizes. So I have a cost comparison sheet at the end that I will show you that actually compares the same 2 fluid ounce or 60 milliliter comparison sheets. So now what about acrylic gouache? Now remember I told you there are also brands of acrylic gouache. So this is gouache because it has that matte finish, but it is non-reactive. Ah, Tippy, don't attack me. It's too scary. Liquitex. Oh, she got me. Gouache. Okay, so that is that. And she's like purring at the same time. Tippy, you're so weird. Oh, this one's never been opened before. I'll just swatch it right from the cap. Okay, so this is not, okay, I'm gonna scoot over here. So this is, no Tippy, don't attack me. I'm like on a roll and I don't wanna stop filming to kick your butt while you kick mine. Okay, so that's the liquid acrylic gouache. And as you can see, it applies and looks pretty similar. No surprise there. Okay, so that's that. Okay, what else? Next. Okay, I had to extricate Tippy so I could continue my work. Good Lord. Okay, so what's another category? These are going to be the 6. Matte acrylic. So there's also brands that just create a paint, acrylic paint, that just happens to be super matte. So that is also an option. Now, this actual tube is about $20, which, you know, is not a little amount of money, especially for a tube of that small. And again, I will get to the cost comparison at the end. So, but there are brands, again, that are just matte by design. So could that be an alternative to gouache? Well, if the matte finish is what you're looking for, then absolutely yes, of course it is. Now, gouache also comes in this really bizarre little jelly cup thingamajiggy that I don't understand, but it's super cool. So yeah, you can buy it in different sets. I think all of these are Japanese brands. So this is a set. I told you I was all in. This is a set of like 50. So these are about $1 for one of these cups. So this was a set of 50 colors and it was about $50. So obviously you have $50 for 50, or you have 20 bucks for just one tube. Now obviously there's a size difference here, so that's something to consider, but still, $1, 20, you know what I'm saying? Difference. It's a big difference. So the thing about these, when you buy gouache that's in these are always going to be your traditional variety. So these are rewettable. They also are much thicker in consistency, as you can see how thick that is. So in reality, you're getting more bang for your buck because you are going to want to add water to get this to the consistency that's good for painting with. This is too thick as of right now. So you would use a little bit of water to thin this out, so you're getting the tube variety thickness at the end of the day. So it's actually even more cost effective, again, because you have to add water to be able to use it properly, so you're getting more paint. These are sort of ultra concentrated in those jelly forms. So you're getting more paint than you even would. So these are, I'm just gonna, spoiler alert, these are super affordable, like crazy affordable in comparison. Now this next product, Golden just came out with this, and it's called So Flat, and it's a matte acrylic. Look at that. Huh, seen that before. Very pricey. $20, okay? So 15, I thought traditional gouache was pricey, but Golden's product, and again, this entire line is made to be flat. So to me, that's, you know, prime example of a gouache equivalent. If all you're going for is that matte look, that's what you're chasing after, then this product would be perfect for you. Now, I'm a huge Golden fan. I mean, they're like as fine an art product as you can buy. So you know it's gonna be quality. Super opaque, much more opaque going out of the tube than the Turner gouache. You can see the Turner gouache. You can see the brush strokes. Same thing with the Liquitex acrylic gouache, and the Golden is like 100%. So it's good to know you're getting something in exchange for your hard-earned dollar. All right, that's always nice to know. And then the last little demo here, this is a cheat that I experimented with when I just started messing around with gouache, because Liquitex makes this ultra matte medium product. Now, I use matte medium for like everything, but when I mix it in my paint, it doesn't make it this ultra gouache looking matte. So when I saw this product, I was like, I have to try that. So this big tub, I mean, this is a lot. This is 16 ounces. It'll probably last me like 3 years. Is $22, okay? I just had a yard sale last weekend. Can you tell? I have all these stickies, but I ran out of 20s. So what you can do with this is, as all acrylic mediums are designed specifically to go with your paints, you can buy a big old tube. This is Lucas. I have a line at Jerry's Artorama. It's carrying Campbell's signature set, but I love Lucas. I've been using this for decades. It's this is about $17 for this great big bottle. 17 compared to 20, excuse me. Now it's not is awesome quality, but it's an awesome price, and it is just fine. Like, it's perfect for 90% of all of my art crafting projects. But if you mix it with the ultra matte medium, guess what happens? You have an ultra matte finish, which is exactly that that you would see with using acrylic or traditional gouache. Now, I used like a 50-50 mix here. You don't have to do a 1-to-1. And by 50-50, 1-to-1, I mean 50% paint, 50% medium. That's a little bit strong. You can use less than that. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn my camera off, because watching somebody blow dry something is turns out super boring. And then I'll come back and I'll show you the actual finishes and then the transparency levels of all of these gouache and gouache alternatives. All right, so everything is all dry, so let's take a look at the results. Turner gouache, as you can see, everything is matte. As you can see, nothing is picking up a reflection. I also added a little watercolor swatch, because this is also, you know, gouaches are their sister of watercolors, traditional gouache, in that it is re-wettable. And as you can see, the opacity is different. The matte acrylics is probably just second to the Golden So Flat. I do have to say they are the most expensive. No, actually they're not, and I'll get to that in a second. They're the second most expensive, but I mean, their coverage, that's bananas. You can't see a single brush stroke, which actually that is also true of the Matisse. So it performed better in terms of the opacity than anything else. So that's nice to know that your price tag is paying for something. The least best coverage is the cheapest one, which is that Hemi. That's the little jelly cup that we did. Okay, which makes sense. It's the cheapest. So you would have to probably do 2 or 3 coats to get to this level of opacity. So all things to consider. This was the mix of the ultra matte medium. Now, I've done this test before and it turned out better than this red for whatever reason. So you can see a tiny bit of sheen, just a little bit. So you could just add more matte medium, or perhaps because I added a thick second layer there, that wasn't stirred well enough together. I have, like I said, tested that before, and it was truly, truly matte. But anyways, you can see that matteness is really like the end game of this gouache. I just wanted to show you the cool part though about the reactivation. So for mixed media artists, the traditional gouache, and as you can see, you know, it really, really, truly can get you some cool effects because it's so blendable. So you can make some really awesome background art, right? Because you're able to re-wet, you can blend, you can make some sick backgrounds. You can do a spray bottle into here and watch some cool effects. So the water reactive type of traditional gouache for us, I'm also a mixed media artist, it just ramps up the fun zone. It also means that when you're applying other colors on top, you can experiment with blending them together. It is way trickier, I'm not gonna lie, to do that because they're opaque and they're so thick. It's very different experience than working with watercolors, just FYI. And then as far as the acrylic alternatives go, you can use those exactly the same way you would with any acrylic paint. So it's just the matte effect that is the end result, which again, I was showing you my art earlier. It's just super cool. So if you don't want the trouble of the water reactivableness, whatever that word is, because that can also get you into trouble. If you do a great background and you want to freeze it, then you have to spray a sealer on it so it doesn't move, and that can be kind of a pain. So honestly, the acrylic versions is a lot more predictable because you don't have that water reactive power. One last thing that's super cool about gouache is that because it's so opaque, you can layer light over dark and dark over light. And like, how cool is that? There's very few other art materials on the market that is true for. So especially when you're using something that is water reactive, it's so unusual to have like a white that goes on so opaquely, over darker underlayers. But that's also why, and when this is traditionally, gouache, when it was first became commercial, was added to watercolor sets because it was fantastic for highlights. And so that is very, very true today. A lot of people who are true watercolorists will just allow one little tube of their designer gouache in with their watercolor palettes to be able to add those highlights because it just sits on top. But again, the only thing you need to worry about, again, my mixed media people, is that because they're so water reactive, when you're adding layers, you have to be careful because the top layer is liquid and it can activate the layer underneath. So just something to keep in mind. So the biggest thing that I was interested in learning was you have all of these kind of comparable products. What one do you buy, right? The golden was the best, but it's super expensive. These are all different sizes. So I went online, and after I figured out the pricing for each individual product, I did some math. I know, took me forever, but I did it. And I found out the average pricing for 2 fluid ounces, which is, that's 2.5. It is, do I even have, oh, these little guys are 2 ounces. This little guy right here. So what's the comparable price for every one of these alternatives in 2-ounce increments? So the Matisse Matte, that's this guy, that's this brand. It came out to be $16 for this, again, 2-ounce product. Now, that was really good. I mean, it had really good coverage. It was second to the Golden So Flat. So let's look at that next, actually. So the Golden So Flat Matte Acrylic is $20. So as you can see, the Matisse is just a little bit cheaper, but they're pretty expensive still, okay? And those are both acrylic, so they're permanent when dry. Now let's check out the Turner. Now I'm kicking myself because this is the one that I went and loaded up on when I was brand new at my local Jerry's. So these little tubes are 15 approximately. That's about an average. Some are 10, some are 20. So this is about an average depending on the color. So Turner gouache for 2 ounces averages $36 for 2 ounces. And that is above and beyond, far away, the most expensive, right? So traditional gouaches tend to be more expensive than the acrylic gouache alternatives. Okay, I'm going to repeat that. Traditional gouache, more expensive than acrylic gouache. So if you're not sure where to go, and you are a mixed media artist and you're used to working with acrylics and you want that matte finish, I would steer away from traditional gouache. It doesn't cover as well. It's super reactive, which can be sometimes dicier to work with, especially if you're layering, because that's always going to get activated again. So my recommendation would be good to go with an acrylic, just because you know what you're getting into, if you have experience with acrylics. But it just depends on your application and your end goal. The Liquitex brand, because I do recommend working with fine art products whenever possible, is about comparable as the Matisse, okay? All the fine art brands are about the same for acrylic gouache variety. And then this is where it gets super fun. The Hemi jelly cups are so cheap, right? So they're about $2. Now, they are so cheap, which also means that their application is not going to be as good as your fine art products. However, they're just so cheap. So if you want to get some traditional gouache and mess around with it, getting these little sets of Hemis, there's another brand on the market too. You can just search gouache jelly cups. They're less than $2 for the same amount for all of these. So they're great to mess around with without like literally burning a hole in your wallet. So that's for traditional gouache, cheapy alternative. And then for an acrylic gouache alternative, a super cheap way to get involved with some of this fun matte stuff is to grab the ultra matte medium, right? And mixing it with any acrylic. So you can save a ton of money. It's still a little bit more expensive than these jelly cups, but you can then add it to any of your color, any of your favorite brands or craft brands. This price can go way down if you're working with cheaper paint. I just randomly grabbed Lucas, but you could, if you're working with Liquitex Basics or craft paint, which also can be very matte, by the way, on its own. So do a test like this and check out the sheen if that's something that you're interested in experimenting with. But yeah, this you can dump in any paint, and some paints, like I know like Liquitex Black is very shiny, Lucas Black very shiny, so you can feel free to dump this in all your, it's just good to have around in your art mix. You can dump it into any acrylic paint to basically get that flat acrylic look. So I hope this video was so helpful. Check out this video if you want to learn really like your basic set of mixed media art supplies that will really get you going in about any different art direction. And I will see you next week for a new fun video. Thanks.